Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're going to be starting today a new little 10-minute Torah power for the morning, as is in honor of the Rebbe's and the anniversary of the Rebbe's 70th year of leadership. So we're going to learn every day 10 minutes, the daily Chumash. It's a little lesson. And welcome those that are present and those that are going to be listening online. We're going to start with the weekly portion, which is the portion of Beshalach. We're going to use the Kehot Chumash. It's on page 399, chapter 13 of Exodus, verse 17. This continues the story of the Exodus from Egypt. As mentioned above, there were some Israelites who were reluctant to leave Egypt and brave the unknown desert, thinking that the Egyptians would treat them better now that they had suffered so much from the plagues. Pharaoh had to drive these, in other words, they decided to stay in Egypt. And they were reluctant. They thought after all these the suffering that they probably would be treated a little better. So Pharaoh had to drive these people out of Egypt forcibly. Since they did not leave wholeheartedly, but rather Pharaoh had to send these people out, God did not lead them from Sukkot, the first where they were stationed, via Philistia, because it was nearby, and it would have been easy for the people to return to Egypt. Had it been too easy for them, they would go back. The first obstacle, the first little problem, they'd go right back to Egypt, because they left reluctantly to begin with, these people. For God said the people may have a change of heart when they see the inhabitants of the land of Israel go to war against them and return to Egypt. So what did God do? So instead, God led the people via the desert road toward the other side of the Sea of Reeds. In other words, northward from Sukkot, along the west bank of the sea, and then southward along the east bank of the sea to Etam, which is at the edge of the desert. The Israelites were armed when they went up from Egypt. So God took them in a roundabout way, to take them in a longer way, so that they can go back to Egypt so easily when they confront some serious obstacles. Moses took the bones of Joseph and his brothers with him, meaning they were all buried in Egypt. So he took all their remains with them to Egypt, out of Egypt. For Joseph had bound the sons of Israel, in other words Jacob, by an oath that they should in turn bind their descendants by an oath, saying, God will surely remember you and your descendants, and when he does, meaning when he takes you out of Egypt, you must have your descendants take up my bones from here together with yours. Thus, on the 16th of Nisan, they moved from Sukkot and encamped at Etam at the edge of the desert. Beginning at Sukkot, God went before them by day in the guise of an angel, in a pillar of cloud. He would guide them with a pillar of cloud where to go, so that it guide them along the way. And by night, it was a pillar of fire, so that it gave them light, so that they could travel day and night. So that was how it went. By day, a cloud guided them. By night, a pillar of fire. God did not remove the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Neither pillar disappeared until the other had first appeared to take its place. So it was constant. The next day, on the 17th of Nisan, God spoke to Moses, saying, although the Egyptians have suffered greatly because of the plagues, only their firstborn actually died. The rest of them still have not received the punishment they deserve for having enslaved the Israelites. Furthermore, as long as the Egyptian army survives, the Israelites will never feel entirely freed from their threat. Therefore, speak to the Israelites and tell them to turn back to Sukkot. We'll go backwards now. Traveling first northward along the eastern shore of the Sea of Reeds, and then southward along its western shore, and encamp in the valley before the two peaks of a rock formation that will henceforth be known as Pi HaChirot, the mouth of freedom. Since it is here that I will wipe out the rest of the Egyptian army and thus free the Israelites completely. Have the people camp between Migdol and the sea, stopping before the monument to Baal Zephon, the one Egyptian idol I left intact, in order to mislead the Egyptians into thinking that they still have some hope of overcoming you. You must encamp opposite it, facing the sea. Yeah. When he hears that they are retreating, when the Pharaoh hears that the Jews are retreating, going back, Pharaoh will say about the Israelites, they are trapped in the land. The desert has closed in on them, and they have no idea how to escape from it. I will make Pharaoh stubborn, and he will pursue them. I will then be glorified in the world's eyes through the end that Pharaoh and his entire army will suffer, and the Egyptians, both those who will die here and those who remained in Egypt, will finally recognize that I am God. Since Pharaoh began your enslavement, he will be the first to meet his end. Now, although it seemed that by backtracking they would be walking straight into the face of danger, right? You're going straight back into the hands of Egypt. The Israelites did this, saying, we trust Moses implicitly. They arrived at Sukkot on the same day and waited. The next day, 18 Nisan, the officers Pharaoh had sent with the people saw that although the people were moving toward Egypt, they had not returned to Goshen. They therefore went and informed Pharaoh of this. Now, what happened was, when Pharaoh sent the Jewish people out of Egypt, Moses had told Pharaoh that all they want to do is go for a 3-day journey and then coming back. Mm-hmm. So he sent people with them to make sure that that's happening. When the 3rd day came and they saw that they're not coming back, so these people went back to Pharaoh to tell him, they're not coming back. So that's what he's referring to over here. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled and they're not coming back, Pharaoh and his courtiers had a change of heart towards the people. When they thought about all their possessions they had lent them, right? The Israelites borrowed from the Egyptians everything and took it with them, and they're not coming back now. They said, what is this that we have done, sending Israel away from our service? On the next day, 19 Nisan, Pharaoh harnessed his chariot himself and convinced his people to go with him. He reminded them of how greatly they had suffered on account of the Israelites, and how the Israelites had deviously made off with their possessions. Furthermore, he promised to lead them himself into battle, and to divide the spoils with them equally. He took 600 choice chariots, as well as the rest of the chariots of Egypt, with officers in command of them all. Before setting out, Pharaoh wavered momentarily. He had a second thought for a moment. But God made Pharaoh, king of Egypt, stubborn, and he pursued the Israelites. It took him 2 days, 19 and 20 Nisan, to reach them. In contrast to Pharaoh's hesitation, the Israelites had left triumphantly, confident in God's well-established ability to overcome the Egyptians. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's chariots, horses, his horsemen, and his army, pursued them and overtook them towards dusk on 20 Nisan. While they were encamped at the Sea of Reeds next to Pi HaChirot before Baal Zephon, Pharaoh drew himself nearer to the front lines as he had promised. The Israelites raised their eyes and caught sight of the Egyptians advancing at their rear in exemplary military discipline, showing they all shared the same vehement hatred of the Israelites. So they see this now happening, that the Egyptians with a massive army are pursuing them. They also raised their eyes and caught sight of the guardian angel of Egypt coming to the Egyptians' aid. They saw this, but when they saw both of these, they became very frightened. Although they knew that they had nothing to fear, since God had promised to bring them safely into the land of Israel, the Israelites nevertheless did what their forefathers had always done. Even when there was no objective danger, they cried out to God.
That's what we
Which
do.
is very interesting. Yes, that is what we do. But it's interesting that when sometimes the Jewish people, what mobilizes them to do the right thing when there's an enemy, right? There's some people say the greatest blessing for the Jewish people is anti-Semitism, right? It unites Jews. It brings them closer to God. If not, we didn't have all these problems. We'd all become, right? We would slide away. We would slip away. Sometimes the Pharaoh pursuing us from behind is what causes the Jewish people to cry out to God. Sadly, but that's how it is many, many times. We don't want any anti-Semites, don't worry. We're not promoting that. But, verse 11, but the heat of the danger soon brought them to speak insolently, despite their trust in God. They said to Moses, was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the desert? Now they start complaining. Was not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us into the desert? We're going to die here. What is this that you have done to us by taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we spoke to you about in Egypt when Dathan and Abiram said, leave us alone and let us serve the Egyptians? We asked you to leave us alone. What did you take us out for? See how quick they had a change of heart. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. From another perspective, the people's voiced these complaints when they saw that the Egyptians continued to approach even after they had prayed. For only some of them still believed in God's promise, while others began to have doubts. In any case, this was the first time the people challenged God's ability to come to their aid. But Moses said to the people, have no fear. Stand firm and witness the deliverance that God will perform for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see again. God will do battle for you. You are to remain silent. So with this, I'll conclude the reading of today, but I just want to mention something very interesting. We're told that the Jewish people broke out, and when this crisis happened, there were 4 different camps or 4 different opinions on how to deal with this. One opinion was, what could we do? They're much stronger than we are, the Egyptians, our army. Let's go back and serve them. Let's go back and serve them. We have no choice. Otherwise, they'll kill us. Another camp said, we're not going back to serve them. We left to go back. Are you kidding me? We're going to go fight them. Let's take up arms and fight them, and hopefully we'll win. A third opinion was, we're going to commit suicide. Let's just jump into the sea, and we'll die in honor, right? We'll die with honor. We're not going back to be slaves. If we have to be killed, we won't let them kill us. We'll die. We'll die with honor, meaning we'll take our own lives. We're not going to let them have the joy of taking our life. And the fourth opinion says, you're all wrong. We should pray to God for salvation. Right? Moses answered all these 4 groups in the last verse that we just read. He said to them, have no fear. Stand firm and witness the deliverance that God will perform for you today. Don't fight. You're not committing suicide and you're not going back there. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, you will never see again. You're not going back to Egypt. You're not going to see them again. God will do battle for you. To those that said, let's go fight, he said, no, you don't have to fight. God will do battle for you. And even those who said, let's pray, he says, you remain silent. This is not a time for prayer. Interesting. He said, you're all wrong. All 4 are wrong. What was the right answer? What should we do now?
Trust Hashem.
Move forward towards Mount Sinai. You have a mission. God told you to go to Mount Sinai. The next very verse, which we'll do tomorrow. God tells Moses, don't tell the people to just get moving. Don't pray, don't fight, don't despair, don't go back, don't lose. Just keep going. You have a mission, you have a destiny, you have a play, you have get focused and do what you have to do. This in life is this is very true. A lot of times we have a determination that we have to do something, but then obstacles happen, whether it's before or ahead of us or behind us. We have negative forces pursuing us from behind, obstacles standing in our way from in front, and sometimes we get intimidated, so we don't know what to do. And there's 4 different opinions going on in our own mind. What should I do now? Should I give up? Should I fight? Keep going. Keep moving. Don't lose focus. Don't deal with the negative. Focus on the end, on the prize, and go for it. And this is true with everything in life. And sometimes it's not even. Sometimes prayer is also misplaced. There's no time. It's not no time to pray. Prayer is a good thing. But when God tells you to go to Mount Sinai, don't start. This is not a time to sit there and meditate and pray. And you gotta go. This is your mission. So whatever you have to do today, by your soul, get going, do it, and have a wonderful day, everyone. And we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Yom Tov.